Call the meeting to order, and our first item on the agenda is a bit of a remembrance to Eileen Labby, who passed away earlier this year. It's a different time for us because we really, as a committee, didn't even get to be together to talk about all of the things that Eileen has done for us as a chairperson on this committee for many, many years and a member for many, many years before that. I know her as a very dedicated member of the committee. She put her heart into it for many years. She oversaw Santa by Sea for many years, which provided, a free Christmas gathering for so many hundreds of people. And I thought that we would start our meeting off tonight just by maybe spending a moment just thinking about Eileen Labby and all the wonderful things she's done for the town of Danvers. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda would be to welcome 3 new River Committee members. We have with us tonight Joe Marabito and Bob Hemian, and Tom Perry could not be here tonight, but we have 2 new members, Bob and Joe. With us tonight is Matt Byrne and Lou and Bill Foley, and Gardner Trask I know is with us remotely, and Bill Nicholson did let me know tonight that he would be watching us on the television, so he is with us as well. We can, is Carol Ann with us? She is not. Carol Ann is not with us, so she usually does our secretary report, and we don't have her with us tonight, but we could start right off the bat with our new business, and I know we have some...
I think we can accept the minutes of
okay.
November and January.
All right.
Everybody got a copy of that?
All right, we've got to go back and accept the minutes for, which ones, January and February from last year?
The November 21st, 2019 meeting and the January 16th, 2020 meeting.
I move that the minutes for November 21st, 2019 and January 16th, 2020 be accepted as submitted.
I have a motion to accept the minutes and a second. Could I have a vote? All in favor?
Excuse me?
Lou?
Excuse me, just one minor correction, I'm sorry, to the minutes of November.
Yes.
I believe that the minutes indicate for the November 2019 meeting, I think that it notes that Eileen Labby was not present at the meeting, but I believe that she was present at the meeting. So I just would like to make that
All right, thank you, Lou. We will correct that, and with that correction, is there any other corrections for that? Do we have a motion to accept the minutes, and do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Matt. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now we'll move on to the minutes of January 16th, 2020. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes from January 16th?
So move.
Thank you, Lou. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes from both November 21st and January 16th have been accepted. Now, moving on to new business, we have one of our items on the agenda, the waterfront access parcels. We're going to move up to the top and start with that, as there are several members here that would like to discuss that. So we're going to move that to the top of the agenda. And with us this evening, we have Aaron Henry from the town of Danvers that is going to speak in regards to the waterfront access parcels.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Aaron Henry. I'm the town's Director of Land Use and Community Services. In that role, I help oversee the Planning Department, which also handles the staffing for the Conservation Commission, and waterfront access has come up over the last few years as part of their jurisdiction. To back up a little bit,
Excuse me, Aaron, can you pull the microphone closer so the people at home can hear you? Thank you.
how's that? Is that a little better? Excellent.
Perfect.
So I won't introduce myself again, but I would just back up and discuss the topic of waterfront access. I came on staff in June of 2018, and shortly thereafter had the pleasure of sitting with, I think it was Mr. Trask, Mr. Darrell Parker, the town manager, and we reviewed at that time a number of, I want to say it was 13 perhaps, at that time, access points in and around town. That the town had done a number of, conducted a fairly in-depth research on back in the late 90s. At that time, that concluded with some signage being installed at some, not all of those locations, based on the legal findings and title that we uncovered at that time. It seems that periodically throughout the decades, this issue comes back up, that we put the signs up, the signs slowly disappear. People seem to forget where these access points are, and then ultimately there's a little push by the public to reestablish that. Earlier this year, we did apply for a subsequent follow-up grant to that, as we'd like to follow up on that work that was last conducted in the late 90s to try to take this one step further. As I was saying, in the summer of 2018, we revisited all of the places we had put signage up in the late 90s and reestablished that signage. I want to say that was probably 6 or 7 locations needed a refresh on public access signage. To the best of my understanding, those signs are up and there still, although we did have to remove one sign. Earlier in 2020, we got into a pleasant, but it was a back and forth with a homeowner abutting one of those access ways, and it does turn out, our own research documented this as well, that the town did not have access rights to one of the access points that we thought we did in the late 90s. And so we've removed one sign that we determined that we did not have rights to. So here we are again. I think a couple weeks ago, it was brought to the attention of the Select Board, the Conservation Commission, land use staff, that a specific encroachment at Brad Street Avenue has occurred. We are aware of that. We have been in contact with that homeowner. There's a couple of things going on at that location. I know you've received information. The selectmen have received that same packet as well as staff. It will likely be discussed by the Conservation Commission in the coming weeks, or certainly in the next 4 to 6 weeks, I would imagine. Really what we're trying to do at the staff level right now when it comes to waterfront access is, as I said, we've applied for a grant to try to take the next step with what we did in the late 90s, and ideally we would try to eliminate the back and forth on some of these that we've experienced where we put a sign up and it disappears. We'd like to try to come up with an action plan to be a bit more concrete, to make it harder for people to for us to lose those access points over time. Specifically though with 107 Brad Street, which was brought to your attention, we have been in touch with the homeowner, the property owner, about their deviations from what they were approved to build. There is complications in dealing with waterfront. It's cross-cutting jurisdictions, so not only does the local Conservation Commission have jurisdiction there, in some cases so does the state under Chapter 91, which is a filled tidelands regulation. The Army Corps of Engineers may also get involved in time to time, as these are navigable waterways, and they also have a right to regulate in not all but many of these instances. So we are in the process of working with the property owner to figure out how to untangle what happened at 107 Brad Street. The other compounding problem we face with Brad Street in particular is the property in question abuts a public way. The last bit of the public way is not built because it runs into the ocean. and the homeowner appears to have made some improvements to their property that are on the town's property. That is, the improvements are in the right-of-way. The right-of-way is not constructed at that point. And so we're also going to be in the process, of trying to work through with the property owner what that means and how we unpack that. But suffice it to say, we understand the importance of waterfront access in the community. We, just like everybody else, I think we don't want to spend our time having to backtrack against work we've already done and having to constantly, build a better mousetrap. So I think with this current, our next initiative on waterfront access is to really try to figure out if we can identify, what can we do at these locations to kind of eliminate this back step from happening in the future. So I don't know if I don't want to ramble on too long, but I think hopefully have covered kind of from a staff perspective a little bit of what we're working on with waterfront access and these issues in particular at 107 Brad Street. I'm happy to take any comments or clarify anything if needed.
Any of
Chris
the-
will tell me if I need to cover anything else.
Thank you, Aaron.
Dan, if I, in 2018, Diane Langlois and I worked together with Errol Park, and who was one regular, excuse me, 1 second, who was a regular member of the river committee many years ago, and helped craft documents that actually Andrea Daly has been referencing. There are many access points that need remediation, but as Danvers, as the town of Danvers always does, we do it in a methodical manner, without trying to public shame people, without trying this in the court of public opinion. We want to make sure that we are accurate in our assessments and our measurements and our actions, and so it's not a speedy process. I admit that some people may be frustrated by that, and I can understand it. But we do have to go through, as Aaron pointed out, one of those parcels we thought we had access to was proven to us that we don't. So before, we can't just run down there with bulldozers and clear the path. We have to be thoughtful and methodical about it. And that's the track that the town administration is taking. Thank you.
Thank you, Gardner. Does anybody else on the committee have any questions for Aaron?
I would like to comment, if we're talking about 107 Brad Street, I happen to be familiar with that landing because I was thinking of purchasing the house that abuts that landing. And back at the time when it was for sale, because I had gone over there when I read this letter, it appears that, he did do some improvements on his property, but it's actually not his property, it's the town's. But it was filled in quite a bit. And it looks like the retaining wall that he had permitted, there was a lot of overflow from that wall that is in the river now, huge rocks. There's really no access because it looks like the rubble or whatever was left over from the construction, so to speak, was just left in the river. So I don't know if you go backwards, but that's not okay.
Right.
I don't think.
Yep.
Just a comment.
Thank you, Joe. And Lou?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if Aaron already covered this, but just to the, I knew you said that you've had friendly conversations, so things seem to be moving at least sort of in a positive direction, and then also, what's the anticipated timeline to sort of, to have these sort of conversations at least reach a conclusion?
Yeah, I wish I could give you a specific timeline. Like I said, I believe the Conservation Commission will be formally discussing this as well at an upcoming meeting. I don't know if that'll happen in December. I would assume it would,
Sure.
given all of the visibility that we've got on it at the moment, but I don't set that agenda. But in the short term, we're working with the property owner to try to figure out the options. I mean,
Okay.
we obviously can go after enforcement right away and kind of be the heavy hand. What we're hoping to figure out is if there's, as Gardner alluded to, a way to try to figure out an amicable solution. Again, there's kind of different layers, right? There's the, what did they build, and did that match the permit from conservation? And then there's maybe the wall, we need to look back and figure out, did he go off script and build on the town land? And that may have a different solution than how we approach the actual permitted pier. So at the moment, everyone's playing along nicely.
Okay.
And we're really trying to figure out if the property owner has the right to apply for, basically, this is a term I'm inventing, but reconciliation. I mean, he can say, yes, I did go off script. I'd like to approach the community and ask for permission after the fact for this. Still gets a full review. That's their right, or we can just go straight to enforcement. We're just trying to figure out how likely it is that he comes correct, or if he wants to try to, kind of get this blessed as he built it. And so we're still in that dialogue phase.
Do we have any timeline on enforcement at all that we need to act by? So we're not like we're up
No.
against any sort of deadlines or what have
No.
you? Okay,
We're okay at the moment.
okay,
I mean, the project's still an open project, so.
right. Okay, thank you.
Lou, to your point, one thing you should know is that town property is not subject to adverse possession, ever.
Right,
So, no matter how long a property owner may have encroached on a piece of town property, it always remains town property.
okay, thanks. Thank you, Gardner. I just wanted to make sure that there was no other sort of, any other sort of timing that we had to be careful of, but I appreciate that.
Thank you. I would also like to add that Andrea Daly has put together some packages for each committee member regarding the Brad Street, and also regarding funding what is done with the excise tax. I have the packets here for everybody, and thank you, Andrea, for putting that together. Is there anything that needs to be added, Andrea, if you'd like to take the floor for a minute? Andrea Daly, if there's anything additional that you might add, our agenda is pretty full tonight, but I did tell Andrea that she could have a couple minutes here to discuss anything that's not been added as of yet.
Go.
Andrea Daly, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 3. I prepared for each one of the members of the River Committee 2 packages and a cover letter explaining the situation. The ultimate goal, I believe, that our group that's working for is to reestablish the right-of-way at 107 Bradstreet Avenue. The important part is to remove the fences that the owner has placed on town-owned property. Right now, that property has granite blocks at its entrance, and it goes down into the Danvers River. The roadway, or that particular right-of-way, is very generous. It's 50 feet wide, and it goes another 100 feet down into the edge of the river. So we're talking about a 5,000 square foot lot. It's almost, as somebody said, it's like a play lot. And the important part that we want to get out of all of this is to remove the fences that were erected by the owner of 107 Bradstreet Avenue, so that the townspeople can have an unobstructed route to the water's edge. That's our ultimate goal. As far as the filling in and the pier and float system, that can come at another time, but in the stages that we would like is the removal of the fences that were haphazardly put on either side of the sign that is marking that right-of-way. Right now, there's a 5-foot path that this man has theoretically established as this is the right-of-way, enjoy it. 5 feet is not 50 feet wide. The second thing in the package that I have given to this board, or the board will have when they leave, is two Mass General laws. And the Board of Selectmen are in receipt of this. Most of them didn't even know that they existed. And in this case here, 60B, Chapter 60B, Section 2, allows for the town to have excise taxes on boats. The value, the fair cash value on the boats or vessels that are moored in Danvers is $10 per thousand. That money is paid into a separate fund. It's kept separately from all the other funds. And it is paid to the town and city by July 1st. So wherever the boat is moored, a vessel is moored on July 1st, they have until August 1st to pay the excise tax. That money is put into a general fund, and 50% of all of those funds are credited to the Waterways Improvement and Maintenance Fund, which is under your control. So I know that the town has applied for a $15,000 grant in order to explore the right-of-ways in town, to survey them so that they know what the correct length, width, and size of those lots are. If that grant is not given to the town, you as a body have the ability to claim money out of this maintenance fund. That's the most important document that I'm giving to you as a group. And it says, Section 5G, a city or town may establish a municipal waterways improvement and maintenance fund to receive revenue under this section. And that money can be spent on 4 different ways. One is maintenance dredging, which we all know needs to be done and is the most it is the most very expensive item, the dredging. But that's only one of the 4 uses. The other use is to have retaining walls, piers and wharves, and moorings that the town owns. That's another way that they can spend the money. Then the next one is for law enforcement and fire prevention. That's another one. But the most important one, which I thought was, for me, is that the public access. You can take money to establish and maintain your access areas to the water. And the Board of Selectmen it behooved them if they would find out how much money, take an audit now, to find out how much money is still available, because we have not done dredging so far for a few years. So that money must be piling up, and you people have the ability to tap into this money source to do the public access. And when they do an audit, we'll find out how much money is in that fund. And if the $15,000 grant doesn't come forward, then you have the ability to request part of that money, if you choose to, in order to complete this problem of public access. The other stuff goes to other boards, the rocks in the water and the retaining shelf that was created, that comes underneath the Conservation Commission. And so that's something else that we're going to ask to have done. This is going to be a long, slow process.
Thank you,
But
Andrea.
we are looking forward to having it done. Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for your time.
Thank you for your looking into this for us. And the packets, we have a packet for everybody, and we appreciate your insight.
Dan, just 2 points of clarification. Since the selectmen's meeting I participated in, there are 2 things I'd like to clarify. One is that every year, every budget and every department gets audited. And this particular fund has been audited every single year. The primary purpose that we've been holding money there is for, obviously, dredging. It's difficult to raise enough taxation, it's difficult to get enough grants, so that's the primary cause. But as the chairman had mentioned at the selectmen's meeting, we will provide the river committee with the last audited findings and any updates to that document. The other point I'd like to raise is that the committee itself does not have the ability to expend funds, but certainly they would petition the town to do so. So if we found this to be a worthwhile endeavor, if we don't get the grant, and that's what the direction of the committee is, they can certainly make a recommendation through Chris and myself to the town manager to do the survey work. So I mention that more for the edification of our new members as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Gardner. Are we all set with this? And we'll go on to the next item on the agenda, which would be our 2020 meeting calendar. Typically, we would have meetings once a month throughout the year, with exceptions of January and February. Carolina's not with us, and we usually have to confirm that the rooms are available for our meeting, but I think we're probably going to stick with the second Thursday, Chris, right?
I think we've been doing the third Thursday.
The third Thursday of the month.
Yes, but I think it's gonna, if we continue to do in-person meeting, it's gonna be based on the availability of this room. Because this is the only room right now that we can do in-person meetings at, and naturally social distance. Guess that would be up for discussion, whether it makes more sense to go with a virtual meeting.
Chris, your microphone's not working.
Not at all?
Or it's too
How
far.
about now? Can you hear me now?
A little closer.
So I think the question is, should we move forward with virtual meetings or continue to try to do in-person meetings? I think either way, we may lose members. I think the important thing is to just make sure that we have a quorum before each meeting. So I guess that would be up for discussion and vote.
Okay. Would anybody like to talk about whether they'd like to have it in person or virtual? Like Bill?
I personally would prefer in person, based on the availability of the room.
I second that.
Current schedule we have now calls for the next meeting on December 17th, 2020, a Thursday. So that would be up to the chairman whether we go with that. And then I think it was February and March that we had not held meetings in the past.
Correct.
I think that was partly due to getting the quorum with a number of people being in Florida. So that might be something that could be revisited in the future, whether or not you want to continue to skip those 2 winter months, or if there's going to be enough business that would warrant it, continue meetings every month.
Okay, I think that we should look to have a meeting in December around the 17th, like we've got planned, and we'd have to ask the town to see if this room was available. Carol Ann could find out. Would December 17th work for everybody? That's probably the third Thursday of the month of December.
Fine with me.
Fine with me.
It's fine with me.
So,
We're in agreement with in-person meetings.
Lou?
Yeah, may I just make a note just about in-person meetings? And again, this is just a consideration, and I have no, I'm obviously here, I'm not, I'm okay with having with an in-person meeting, and I understand also that there is an advantage to in-person meetings in terms of people, people can attend, but on the converse as well, there is, I know that definitely there are members of the committee today who are not here, in part because of they're in a higher risk group for COVID, and so they're not here in person, whereas they may be able to participate remotely. And so I'm not sure also if that's I'm not sure also if in terms of participants who would come to the meeting, if someone would maybe not necessarily come to the meeting because of concern of coming, of in essence going into an interior space during the middle of a pandemic. And so I'm not sure if is there a way that if we do have even if we have an in-person meeting, is there the ability for people to participate, either the members of the public as well as members to participate remotely?
Chris, you might be more familiar with
That's
that.
sort of a
Is,
lengthy question.
Is it, I think what Lou was trying to say is, do we have to go one way or the other, or could there be a hybrid?
Are they mutually exclusive, or can we do even, if there's a possibility, like we have one, you know, we have one in-person meeting, and then we have one remote meeting?
Sure.
I'll have to look
If
at the
I might.
logistics of it. Gardner might be able to add more.
I would think this is a question for the town manager to pursue, because we have been able to do, this is the second one of these type of meetings where I'm available remotely. Here it's easy because I'm not a voting member. But there are specific rules when you have a remote meeting in which all the votes have to be taken by roll call and other actions have to happen. I think that we should get clarity from the town manager about a mix and match. I think he can guide us that way. The other question, maybe on the flip side of what Lou's saying, is, are we sure all members are technically able to participate in a Zoom or a WebEx meeting? Do they have the equipment to do it at home? Are they comfortable with the technology, so on and so forth? Yes, I too prefer in-person meetings because I would rather speak to people and see the new business brought before us, read the room, read the body expressions, body language. So I would suggest that we try doing December schedule December as in person. During that time, do the homework, find out if we can do a mix and match. And then the other thing I'd like to broach is, yes, we had a long-standing, we did not meet in January and February because board members, we were afraid of a quorum. I think a lot of that has been lifted, and I would ask Chris or Carol Ann to poll the board members and find out if they are planning on being remote. And if not, then I think we should go back to a once-a-month schedule. Thank you.
Thank you, Gardner. So we could take with what Lou has mentioned, I know that Bill and Joan would like to be here, but they would, I'm not sure about how they feel about participating over Zoom or whatever is available to us, and how we'll have to check the legality if they can vote on these topics. I know Bill is watching us tonight, but he's not able to participate.
Right.
So we are going to have to do a little research before the December 17th meeting and either have another in-person meeting like this or go virtual, that everybody will have the same level of participation. Does that sound about right, Chris? Okay. I guess we can also talk, while we're talking about the schedule, is typically we haven't met in January or February because people were away. What's the committee's thoughts on having a monthly meeting and including January and February in the mix?
Yeah, I think it was originally usually February and March because we'd meet in January,
Oh, right,
wrap
correct.
up Santa by Sea, and then February and March we'd be off. My feeling is that by the March meeting, the boats are usually back in the water, the docks are starting to go in. I think, given that that's the beginning of the season, it might be prudent to continue to meet, through those months that we normally were off, should any need arise, for Chris to get our, recommendations or blessings for anything that he wants to do in the upcoming season.
Okay.
So my opinion is it's easier to lay out a schedule and have a schedule, and if there's absolutely no reason to come and have a meeting and there's nothing to be on the agenda, it's easier to call the meeting off than it is to, put one together in an urgent situation if we were needed for some, supportive measure or whatever.
That's a good point. So that I believe Matt was looking to have a meeting once a month, schedule a meeting once a month, and then if there's not a lot of importance to that meeting, we could always take it off. Anybody else have any comments on that?
That's what I began with, but I think it's worthwhile doing every month.
Thank you, Bill.
I agree with that sentiment as well. I think it definitely makes sense. And then if we find that there's not a need or for that particular month, then we can pass. But I think scheduling a monthly meeting makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I also agree, because if we need a quorum, then we would have a better chance of having it if we schedule the meetings.
Okay, thank you, Bob. So I will, I guess, take a recommendation that we would meet the third Thursday of every month, starting with December 17th. And then that will have to be verified by the town that we would have a place to meet, or that we would all be maybe meeting virtually, and would move forward from there. So we may have to get an answer from the town as far as what's available and how we should proceed forward. Yes, Lou?
And just a clarification, and this is just picking up from what Gardner was saying, in terms of, so are we going to look into potential of, I think as you said, like a mix and match, so the potential, or I guess the legality of having an in-person meeting with the potential ability of people to participate remotely? Is that?
Yes, we're gonna look into that option and doing meetings completely virtual.
Okay. Got it. Okay, thank you. I just
Thank you.
just want to make sure what we were looking into. But I also want to make it clear that I'm, that in terms of I'd be happy to participate in whatever forum. But again, the concern I had was making sure both that the members as well as the members of the public can participate to the maximum extent that they can. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we need a motion for that, Chris? So I'd like to get a motion that we would meet throughout the year, every month, on the third Thursday, as best as possible throughout the year. That would be our agenda, with the confirmation from the town that a room was available or a virtual meeting could be set up.
I motion it.
Joe, do you have that?
Yep, I think it's good to meet once a month, and like Matt said, you can always cancel
All right.
if there's
Do
no agenda.
I have a second, or?
Second?
All right, thank you, Matt. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Our next order of business would be to nominate a chairperson and vice chairperson for the committee. As you know, Eileen has been the chairperson for many years, and I've been the backup. And I think that in her absence and in her passing, we need to make a nomination for chairperson and a vice chairperson. So would anybody like to comment?
Dan?
Bill?
You've been doing it regularly when Eileen was not available, and you've had quite a bit of time on the board and quite a bit of experience with it over many years. I would like to nominate you as the new chairman of the River Committee.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
No,
I feel
thank you.
honored, and I will do my best to keep on the tradition here.
I wonder if you'll be thanking us down the road.
I spoke to Chris about how long the chairperson would remain as chairperson, because I think, I'm not sure if we have any particular bylaws as far as what it has been, but typically I think we should probably, maybe every November, nominate a new chairperson and have some kind of a rotation of this position. In the past, it hasn't been that way, but it's something to consider for us. So I think we can think about that, but I think we also would like to nominate a vice chairperson, so that if I was not able to be here, that someone could take over.
One point I was thinking about it the other day, in terms of like the yearly tenure. We technically all either get appointed or reappointed at town meeting every May, at the annual town meeting. I don't know how you feel or anybody else on the board feels, but I feel like if we're going to do a changing of the guard, so to speak, each year, I think possibly the June meeting might be appropriate, given the fact that, if you weren't to be coming back, for example, because you wanted to retire, move, to step down, whatever, that allows you to serve until the new appointments are made in May, and then at the June meeting, we could pick the chairman for what essentially is the board's year, so to speak, since it's subject to change any May, based on who gets reappointed, who decides to retire, et cetera. But I don't know how anybody else feels in terms of timing on that, or if there's any other reason we should look to a different month.
I think that June makes good sense with what you've talked about, Matt. Since we are appointed in May, that it would be a good time to elect the chairperson in the June meeting. Lou, did you have something?
That is the model the selectmen follow.
I guess,
Right after the election, we choose a chairperson.
Okay.
I guess one question I just have, just in terms of because we've currently elected a new chair, would we, like to have that continue for at least for a full year? So would we be voting would we be voting in June, or would we say defer it to the following June?
I mean, I would say, let's just, for example, say we do it till this June, so we've got
Okay.
about 7 months.
Okay.
And let's say Dan has, epiphany, decides he wants to go live in St. Lucia, and he's gonna close up shop and move. We don't wanna tie him here, so to speak, for
That's a good point.
18 to 19 months.
That's a good point.
I mean, I think, let him get his bearings as the chairman for the next couple of months, see how everything goes. And if he feels like he wants to continue on, we can give him that nomination again this June. But I feel like let's get through the next town meeting at this point and see how life goes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. Should we make a motion as to what we talked about as far as having an annual election for this committee for the chairperson in June?
Yeah.
So I would recommend you don't need it. There is no charter that guides us on when the election happens, so there's no vote necessary other than the will of the board.
Okay, thank you, Gardner. I think that then amongst ourselves, we'll have this policy, and in June, it'll be on the agenda to either confirm the chair or elect a new chair after the appointment in May. Okay. That being said, we do need to elect a vice chair. If anybody would like to make any kind of nominations, I think we're open for that right now.
Can we nominate someone who isn't here?
Can we nominate somebody that's not here?
I always like to think of Bill Nicholson as the, sort of our Eileen's Eileen's right hand. And, I think Bill has been on the River Committee for a long, long time, has done an invaluable amount of service and work to the waterfront and to the River Committee. And I think, it would be appropriate and to bestow upon him that position if he would accept it. I just don't know if we can do that without him here.
Well, I think Bill is watching, and I think that we could, while we're here, and since it's not official and doesn't need a vote, we could ask Bill and have an answer by the next meeting. And if he should decide to accept it, then we can confirm that with him next meeting. And if he doesn't, we could go ahead and nominate the vice chair at our next meeting.
Okay.
Yes, Lou?
Is it possible that we could nominate sort of contingent upon his acceptance of the nomination? I'm not sure if that's...
There's no vote needed, just ask them.
Right, I think since we don't have to vote, we could ask Bill. And I also want to ask if there's any other nominations other than Bill, but I think that, very
I'd
good.
just like to second the nomination of Bill Nicholson.
All right, thank you.
And I would just like to add as well, just that he's been, having known Bill for many years, I think his commitment to the town as well as time on the committee, I think he'd be a terrific choice.
I have a question. Is it a possibility to have Bill on the phone if he's not able to meet here in person for the next meeting? Is it possible to have him on a phone message that he can state his point of view or give him time to?
I think that kind of ties in with the whole virtual meetings.
Yeah.
And we'll have to look into the logistics and the legality of all of that. But if it's possible, we'll do it.
And Bob, if you could pull your mic closer too.
Okay, sorry, Gardner.
Okay, very good. So I think we'll ask Bill and get his response and then take, confirm that in December. Next item on the agenda is the 2020 waterfront update, and Chris, I
Thank
believe
you.
that's you.
Thank you, Dan. Congratulations on your chairmanship.
Thanks.
If I could use the first couple minutes of my time to go back to talk a little bit about Eileen. For several months now, I've been thinking of a way that we can honor Eileen's decades-long contributions to the Danvers waterfront and to the River Committee. I think as many of you know, Eileen and I would spar back and forth many times at committee meetings about her position on our mooring waiting list. Eileen claimed that she filed an application decades ago, back when Iggy Gagnon was the harbor master, and she wanted to claim her spot right out in front of Pope's Landing, right off of the harbor master boat there. Although I could never find a record of this application, she was adamant it was there. And while I couldn't honor her mooring request back then, I can't think of a better way to honor Eileen's memory than to create a public mooring in her name off of Pope's Landing. Therefore, as mooring space opens up in the area, I'm looking to install a mooring float installed by the town and will be available to visiting boaters. Boaters visiting our harbor will have a welcoming and safe place to secure their boat for an overnight stay in Danvers. I believe Eileen was a great ambassador to our waterfront, and I can't think of a better way of continuing that legacy for decades to come. I don't think we need a vote on that.
Can we make a motion in support of that?
Sure.
I make a motion in support of that. I feel like the board recognizes how much time Eileen put in to her beloved waterfront between, Santa by Sea, keeping Dave on his toes, making sure everything was in line and running smoothly. And, Eileen was such a boater, and I think it's a very appropriate remembrance. So I motion we support it.
We have a motion. Lou?
And a second?
We have a motion and a second.
And I'd just like to say, I'd just like to echo what's been said about Eileen. She's was just a fixture in the community, and it's a fitting tribute. I was very saddened when she passed. We've known her we've known Eileen, her late husband Richard, for just many years, and it's just, really just what an amazing contribution to the town and a loss. So anything that we can do to commemorate her contributions is, I wholeheartedly support.
I have a question. Would that be free of charge for a boater to use?
Yes.
Okay.
Bill?
I was just wondering if you would consider any other memorials, perhaps not interested, maybe even in addition to that. I think that's a great idea with the mooring, but perhaps a plaque somewhere down the waterfront saying in memoriam of her, a dedicated person who was a member of the River Committee for X amount of years, who was, wasn't she responsible for initiating the Santa by Sea program and organized and ran it for so many years. So just a thought about getting something that is more visible to the people on land, not just the visiting boating people.
Okay, thank you, Bill. I'd have to ask Chris if, what would be the steps to go forward, maybe something, I know there's benches here and there, and maybe a place for a plaque down. I think the appropriate place would be down by Pope's Landing where the waterfront is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's definitely doable. There is a process. It would have to be approved by the Board of Selectmen, et cetera, Recreation Committee. But we can initiate that process and identify a location to start and determine from there, are we talking a memorial bench, a memorial plaque? And we'll initiate that process and go from there.
Just a thought.
Thank you, Bill. Going back to the motion that we have on the floor to honor Eileen Labby with a public mooring off of Pope's Landing. We have a motion by Matt and a second by Lou.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
So just moving forward with our 2020 waterfront update, I can share with the committee that 2020 proved to be a very busy year on our waterfront. Probably the busiest year I can remember in my last 20. I think COVID had a big impact on a lot of people. A lot of people's vacation plans were canceled or altered in some way, and a lot of those people took to the water. It was a challenging year for staff. We did not run our pump out program this year. We weren't sure that we could be in compliance with health guidelines due to COVID for that. But staff was very busy. In other areas, I provided you with a month-to-month comparison of our incidents that we had this year. We had 240 calls for service this year. That's up from 113 that we had last year. We issued 6 state citations. We had none in 2019. And waterways violations, which is the violations that we would issue for failure to pay the annual slip fee to the town. We issued 104 violations for that. That's up from 82 in 2019. Some highlights on that sheet that I gave you. We had 2 boat crashes this year. Fortunately, neither of them had personal injury. We did have 1 boat fire. We had a tragic drowning in the Crane River of a child back in August. Several disabled motorboats, several medical aids. We had 28 motorboat stops, 1 sunken vessel, and a number of, again, citations that we issued, mostly warnings for infractions. So it was a very busy year this year. We expect it to be the same way next year, but I think we're in a good place staffing-wise to address the needs of the community and handle all the calls for service or the increased calls for service that we've been receiving. So I hope this information is helpful for you. Again, I did mention earlier that we did not run our pump out program this year. That is a reimbursable program through the state. It was pretty much statewide that a lot of communities weren't running that boat for that reason. We just couldn't keep up with the guidelines and keep our staff safe with all the COVID measures that were put into place. I believe that a lot of our boaters were being responsible and still using shoreside pump out facilities. Of course, I'm sure there were a few, and it did affect our water quality several times throughout the year when the beach did not pass bacteria levels. But I would like to think that a majority of our boaters were responsible and did use those shore-based facilities. We did not staff Sandy Beach this year with lifeguards. That was another, I don't want to call it a cut, but another decision that had to be made in order to address some budget restrictions that we had. We had no incidents at the beach that were notable. And outside of that, I can't think of any other waterfront updates, unless the committee had any other questions.
Any questions from the committee? Chris, for next year, when is the rates for the slips when in the moorings? When is that typically
So we would,
reviewed?
as a committee, I would bring a recommendation to the committee at our December meeting for implementation the following year. I don't think we're in a position right now to increase rates for next year. I think although waterfront activity is up, I still think people are struggling. I don't feel like it's the right time to increase rates, so that we're taking people away from this recreational opportunity that's available to them during these difficult times. So I will confer with my bosses, and if there are any changes, I'll bring them to the December meeting, but I'm not recommending any at this time.
Thank you. And then on to the next item, would be talking about the budget and the boat replacement.
Sure. Budget for fiscal year 2022. As you can imagine, COVID made things very difficult budget-wise for us. Going forward into 2022, I think it's going to be another difficult year, so we are level funding our operating budget. And that appropriation is, I think it's $13,200, so we'll be level funding that for 2022 as well. Moving on to the boat replacement, I have some good news. I think it's good news. I know that the committee's been listening to me for about 2 or 3 years now, asking for your support in us replacing our 33-year-old 25-foot patrol boat. It's served us well for many years, but it's become less reliable. You supported that, and we did get an appropriation of $100,000 in FY21 towards the purchase of that. We estimated the total cost of that boat to be about $225,000. This is our 25-foot patrol boat. It also serves as a fire boat. It has a fire monitor and fire pump on it. I'm pleased to inform you that we were able to secure a used surplus Coast Guard boat. Came out of North Carolina. It's a 25-foot safe boat Defender. It's in very good shape. We're making some improvements to it, and we're very confident that we will, once these improvements are made, we'll have a solid platform that we'll be able to use for many years to come. And in the end, I think $225,000 will probably end up being under $100,000 for this boat. So I think that's some good news. I was going to bring pictures, but I want to surprise you when it's all done. But I think you'll be impressed. I think we got a good deal.
Congratulations, great job.
Yeah, that's
Thank you.
awesome.
Well done, yeah.
Chris, when do you think that boat, the new boat, will be ready to go into use?
So we're working on it right now. We've done a lot of work so far on it. We're looking at repowering it at this point, and the last thing that's left to do on it will be the upfitting of the electronics and emergency radios and equipment, and installing the fire pump on it. So I am hopeful that we will have that in service for next season, so March or April.
Awesome.
Yes.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah, just so once this new boat is online, what are the steps in terms of the older, the 33-year-old 25? Is it kept in reserve, surplus? What is the?
Now, my understanding is that it will go out to auction or bid, and somebody can bid on that at that time and purchase that, and then those funds will go back into the general fund, whatever's received from that.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Chris regarding the budget or the new boat or anything else? Thanks, Chris. We'll move on to old business with an update on the Crane River Bank. And that's you again, Chris.
So I gave everybody a copy of the meeting minutes of a conference call with Coastal Zone Management, town representatives, including our town engineer and DPW director, and our consultant, CDM Mike Nelson. Give you maybe a minute or two to kind of look that over. I can summarize a little bit of it for you, and I don't think any of it's positive news. I think the one positive thing that I can share with you today on the shoreline stabilization project is that the town has been pursuing it aggressively, and it seems as though every time we submit a proposal, we run into a roadblock. Coastal Zone Management has not been pleased and approved several versions of our plans to improve that shoreline. We had initially gone in with a hybrid solution of doing stone revetment and plantings. That was changed to a mostly plantings, which we didn't want to go to, but we knew that that was probably the only thing that was going to get approved at this time. And as of this last meeting on October 22nd, it sounds like they are now requiring a lot of studies to be performed to determine whether that solution would be effective. One of the things that we were trying to achieve here was that we would work with Coastal Zone Management to submit a grant application, which we did for this current calendar year. Unfortunately, it did not make the cut. I think you will see in the minutes of that meeting, I think they received 43 applications and 29 of them were funded. So it was a very competitive year, as they stated in the letter. But there's a lot of work that we have to do, a lot of feedback that we got from them that they want. And unfortunately, I think we're at the point now where we've exhausted the funds that were appropriated through town meeting in both FY17 and FY20, I believe. So we would be looking at filing a new grant application in the spring of next year, I believe it is, with a 2-year project window, asking for full funding or most of the funding to include all planning, testing requirements, and construction. So it's not great news. Again, I think the great news is that I can tell you that the town has been aggressively pursuing some sort of solution there and doing what we can to submit a plan that's going to get approved. We just can't seem to get there right now. So we're still working on it. You can let Joan know, Louis.
Yes, I will.
I know it's she's been very passionate about that.
Yep.
But I think the town's doing our best, and we're just not making a lot of progress right now. But we're not giving up yet. We're not throwing in the towel.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris. Does anybody have any comments regarding the Crane River bank stabilization? All right, moving on to the next item on the agenda for old business. I did mention to Chris that, it was a year or so or more ago that someone came to the River Committee with the suggestion that we have some kayak racks. A woman, sorry, I can't remember her name, but she did come and suggest that we get some kayak racks up to allow people to have access, better access to the river with kayaks. And it was going to be, I mentioned it to Chris, and we were going to maybe have it as an Eagle Scout project or something like that. And I was thinking over the course of the summer, because I had been down Beverly a few times, and they have several areas where they've got kayak racks, Lynch Park, Independence Park, Old Bear Park, and I noticed that they were all filled and that there was a demand for them, at least in Beverly. I was unable to find online really how their system worked. I know it goes through the harbor master, but I thought that it might be a time for us as a committee to revisit that, whether we could get some kayak racks if it was something that we might suggest, maybe at Sandy Beach or someplace where it would be appropriate for them to be, and how that would work. I know that perhaps the Beverly Harbor Master would have a lot of insight as far as how their program worked this summer.
I think it's a great idea. I know it's something that's come up before at the River Committee meetings. Again, like Dan said, I think it was something we were looking to have an Eagle Scout do. It's certainly something that we could do in-house if the committee felt that there was more of an immediate need for it. I don't think it's really something that we would charge or take reservations for. I think if we were to set it up at Sandy Beach, it would just be a first come, first serve. Just lock it to the structure itself and use it as needed. That's my initial thought, but I'd be open to suggestions from the committee.
I think that's, you'd have to really look into it, because with the wind on the river, you could end up in a liability situation, because I happen to have a kayak rack, and it's, I watch the kayaks fly some days when the wind picks up. So if somebody gets hit with one, we do have to be careful how we approach that. That's just a thought. There's nothing wrong with having the rack, but it has to be secured.
Very good point.
Did you have any locations in mind, given the condition of the river bottom, particularly at Sandy Beach, and how many people have been plucked out of the mud previously down there?
I think Sandy Beach is probably the most ideal spot for getting in and out of a kayak. And the only other location I could think of would be Pope's Landing, but space-wise, I don't think we have it to accommodate a number of kayaks. I mean, if we were talking a handful of them, we could probably do that, but I think outside of that, Sandy Beach is probably the better spot for it.
I think it might be worth looking into putting one on Sandy Beach and maybe getting in touch with Beverly to see how they work their system. I know they charge for their spots. I'm pretty sure that you have to reserve it and maybe pay an annual fee. It could be minimal, but it could be at least help pay for the rack, making it worthwhile for the town to put it up. Yes, Lou?
I think it's a good, it definitely sounds like a good amenity. And I remember when the woman presented about this before, and I think that it'd be a good amenity, and I'm definitely in favor of investigating it. And Chris, if you can find out more from from Beverly, any sort of the details, including any even sort of any some of the concerns, like any liability concerns as well that we should be aware of. But I'm in favor of definitely looking into it. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, yes, Bill?
I tend to agree. I think it would be a good idea too, but I would also think that it would probably be something you'd charge for, similar to leaving a dinghy on a mooring. I would assume that if somebody wanted it, they would be using the rack for the whole season. So they could put it there, lock it up, come down and use it in the water. And you wouldn't be just using it for one time, one day or something. So I look forward to hearing the outcome of your investigation.
Okay.
I do believe that Salem also has a couple of them down at Winter Island, in that there's a waiting list to get on there, and it's in quite big demand to get a spot there to leave your kayak for the season and to be able to use it. And they're all locked up, but I think it's a great idea for the community.
Thank you.
I think it's a good idea as well. The thing that they do, I know they do it at some of the campgrounds, is they do it in a lottery situation, so that if you build a kayak rack that's going to hold 12 boats, say, those 12 people will never give up those slots, and then the rest of the community gets kind of ousted on the use of it. So we would, if you did it, you would have to make it fair somehow so that the same people don't kind of have it for years. Just a thought.
It's a good point. Very good.
I will do some research and have an update for you at the next meeting.
Thank you. Well, that's the end of our agenda. I think if anybody has any new business or anything they'd like to bring up for next month's meeting, we can go through that now. And if not, we will, I would ask for a motion to adjourn our meeting.
Just one quick question on the waterfront. Is everything done, closed for the year, docks out, or is there still lingering boaters given the mild weather up to this point?
I would say most of our boaters are out. We recently, as of Saturday evening, we pulled all the docks out at the town marina, and those are all secured for the winter. So that leaves us with Pope's Landing and hauling out our boats, and then we'll call it a season.
Great.
Any other questions for Chris or items for next month's agenda? Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn?
Motion has been made, seconded.
Third.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Have a nice